Church in Yorkshire is hosting WWE-style wrestling shows in a bid to attract more people to join their congregation.
The unorthodox church experience was founded by Gareth Thompson, who wanted to combine his strong faith with his passion for being a professional wrestler. He joins us now, alongside the Reverend of St Peter's Church in Shipley, West Yorkshire, Natasha Thomas.
Good morning.
Well, very good morning to you. Gareth Thomas.
Morning.
How does wrestling attract more Christians back to the church?
I think just by being open, for people to see the church as being something completely different. It's not the traditional sitting on pews or just people coming in and singing hymns. There's so much more to knowing God and hearing the hope that God gives us. So that's why it's working, I think.
But I thought Christians were supposed to be non-violent.
Well, the joy of wrestling is it's choreographed. It's just fun and play, and it's about light and dark. It's about good and bad, and that's the best thing about wrestling in church, because that's what the Bible's all about, how we deal with that darkness and how we overcome it with light.
OK, tell us about that. Gareth, maybe you can tell us about it. The wrestling that you're doing, it's not violent wrestling, but it shows that violent struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, so we have a lot of characters and stories that we're telling in the ring. So when I say David and Goliath, you can imagine a big wrestler like one of our guys in the back here against one of our smaller wrestlers and telling that story in the ring. And then what we then do is we then unpack it with a preach from the Bible, and we go back into the story in Samuel and we pull it apart and kind of bring it to life in a different way. So people can engage with this in a way that's very different to kind of sitting through a 20-minute sermon. It just brings it all to life in a completely different way. So we use those characters, those stories and themes. Like, we can touch on racism, we can touch on male violence towards women, and what does the Bible say about that, and what does Jesus say about that? And that's what's so cool about it.
This really reminds me of my boyhood. As I was growing up, I remember when I was staying with my grandparents, my grandmother was addicted to Saturday afternoon wrestling on ITV. It was a big deal. It was a Big Daddy and all of that kind of stuff. And she used to get very cross with me when I said to her, "But, Grandma, it's fixed, it's all rigged, it's all set up."
No, it's not.
Well, yours is, isn't it? Your wrestling is rigged.
No.
Well, we know that good is always going to triumph, right?
Well, not always. We do have times where the villain may triumph, but that's always because a good hero needs a good villain. You know, like the Avengers had Thanos, Jesus has the devil. There's always got to be a battle between the two. You've got to have something to overcome. So sometimes our villains do win, but good will prevail in the end. But sometimes that helps us tell that story and get people into the emotion of feeling it. Because, let's talk about life. It happens. Sometimes we lose in life, and we need to be able to have those feelings and emotions. And as Christians, we need to be able to process that in our faith. And what does Jesus say to us about overcoming it?
That's a very good answer. Very good answer.
Gareth, I wonder if I can ask you, because you are an example that, people are not going to church. This is part of the issue, isn't it? People have lost their faith. You have fewer people going. Can you explain to us your own personal story, Gareth? Because you have a remarkable background, and lots of people turn to self-help or influencers or online. You turned to God, and that saved you. But what were the circumstances and the path that led you there?
Yeah, so, I grew up in a council estate. My dad left when I was quite young. My mum drank. I was abused as a young boy. Homeless at 15, living in a skip. Like, that was my childhood. And a lot of people would say, well, that's the kind of thing that would make you turn away from God, right? You would be very negative towards it. And actually, as time went on, and I had a failed marriage and ended up in debt and unemployed, it wasn't actually all the bad stuff meant that when I did go to church and I was invited one morning, I found myself just sobbing in the worship because there was a feeling there that I couldn't answer, and there was a feeling that I couldn't control. And some guy said to me, "You just felt love for the first time in your life." And I didn't know what to do with it. And that was completely correct. And actually, I've found as my journey's gone on that as I've learned how to overcome these things in my past, I'm now sharing my story with others. And they're kind of seeing it like, well, if Gaz can do it, then I can do it too. And they always ask, well, what's the difference? And I always say, it's actually Jesus is the difference. It's having something bigger than myself to believe in, that it just speaks affirmation over me day in, day out, that I can overcome, I can achieve, I can move past it, and there is a better future. And that's the core of the gospel, is that with Jesus, anything is possible. And yet here we are now, I'm living my dream as a pro wrestler. I used to sit with my grandmother, same as yourself, Richard, and watch the wrestling. She'd watch Big Daddy Giant Haystacks, I'd watch The Rock and Steve Austin, and we'd compare the two. And, you know, and now I'm here doing this, living this out, and sharing my story with others. It's amazing.
I want to come back to the wrestling, but I've just got one more question following on from what Susanna asked you about faith. I was fascinated to read recently that the current Pope found his religion when he was in Argentina as a young man. He was going to a football game. And he was driving past a church that he'd never noticed before. He had no calling to religion before. And he had this sudden calling to go into that church. And he did. It was in the middle of the day. And he said that basically he encountered Jesus in there. He had the most extraordinary spiritual encounter. Is that the same for people like you two, that there was a moment in your lives where you just felt that, if you like, Jesus was calling to you?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I think our hope is that when people come to our events, you know, we had 200 people here on Friday. Like, our hope is that when people come to our events and they see and they hear something of Jesus, that they'll have that encounter too. Like, that to me is the goal. And, you know, we do this here at St. Peter's, but we as Kingdom Wrestling, we're working with other churches and denominations across the country doing events for them as well. And we're seeing hundreds come in because they're searching for something. People want hope and they want justice and they want to be able to come somewhere and be able to turn their lives around and find something that's greater and find something that can inspire them to greatness. And that's what we love doing.
Back to the rough and tumble behind you. This is the question. Do the evil wrestlers... You see, I think I've spotted a few illegal moves going on there. Do the evil wrestlers get to cheat and break the rules? Because I've seen the ref intervening several times. Is that the evil guy pulling stunts he shouldn't be pulling?
Yeah, he should be pulling that. The referee should be giving him a bit more of an admonishment, you know. He should be giving him those public warnings.
Oh, well, great to see you both, Reverend Natasha Thomas and Gareth Thompson. A lot of people say, don't they? Thank you so very much. And thanks to all your wrestlers behind you.
Yeah, give them
a
our
lot
thanks.
of people say that in the run-up to Christmas, it has become too commercialised. Yeah. We've lost the Christian message. We've lost the wrestling. So we're just giving that back to you this morning.
But it adds a whole new meaning to the phrase wrestling with your conscience, doesn't it?
Doesn't it just?